Welcome to the Stop Over Drinking and Start Living podcast, where high-achieving, goal-oriented rebel women come to learn how to live a vibrant and fulfilling life without requiring alcohol to get through it. No labels, no judgments, no saying you'll never drink again. Just real proven methods to help you stop rebelling against yourself with alcohol so you can drink less and do more. I'm your host, Angela Mascenik. Let's dig in. Welcome to episode 324, When to Make or Not Make Financial and Drinking Decisions with Certified Financial Planner, Jamie Berger. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. We have a very special treat today. I'm so excited to have a very special guest, Jamie, who is one of my clients, and she's also a certified financial planner. And we were talking the other day about emotions and when we make decisions based on our emotions. And I shared with her that I had a very big emotional response to the stock market and, some of the changes that have been happening there. And, it made me want to take everything and put it under my mattress. And, I had already talked to my financial planner before that, but I was just sharing with her about those feelings that we have when things might feel uncomfortable and like the decisions that we want to make when we're feeling those difficult emotions. And very quickly, we made the connection between making some of those bigger financial decisions when we're feeling emotional and drinking when we're feeling emotional. And I think that really landed for Jamie because she's in this finance world and working on her relationship with alcohol. And so we decided to come on the podcast and talk about those things because for some reason, we have a lot of accountants and financial planners and people in finance that listen to this podcast and in my program. So we thought it would be very relatable and a different way for you to think about making emotional decisions really about anything. So welcome to the podcast, Jamie.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you. So why don't you just tell them a little bit about you and sort of how you found me and kind of get us up to speed if you can and a little brief intro.
Yeah, sure. So I believe I found your podcast about a year to 18 months ago, just kind of scrolling through iTunes, and I found you that way. I had listened for several months, and you were advertising your 6-month transformation program. And I decided to join that in June of 2024, and that program went through the end of I guess December of 2024 is about a 6-month program. So
Mhm.
that's originally how I found Angela. And that program was so amazing for me. And now I'm doing some one-on-one coaching with Angela now that that's completed. And some other kind of business related things. I do own a financial planning firm. I started that in 2008. So that's what I do kind of full time during the day. And just basically helping people plan for retirement and save for retirement and know that they'll be confidently reaching their goals.
I love it. Thank you. So we were talking about this before we were recording, but I think it's important because Jamie does represent pretty much who my clients are. Like they're professional, they're high achieving, they have a lot of awesome things going on, and sometimes they struggle with drinking. And I just think it's really important to highlight that most of the people that we work with are exactly how I just described. They are people like Jamie, right? They're not people who aren't functioning. Like life coaching and me being a certified coach who helps women stop over drinking. It's more about getting behind the reasons why we're drinking in the first place. So, Jamie, it's not been no secret, kind of had some anxiety and stuff, and we recognize that that's why you were drinking.
That's such a kind way to put it. Some anxiety.
Right? So, like a lot of you ambitious women out there do struggle with this. Jamie was a successful business owner, is a successful business owner, has healthy relationships, takes good care of herself. But then there was this nagging thing with using alcohol to kind of like deal with some stuff that she recognized that, she needed some extra support on. That's what smart women do is they recognize they need help and then they get the help. So, Jamie, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I do. Because when I found your podcast, I think that's why it resonated with me so well because you were talking about, I felt like the group of women that you were working with, I kind of fell into that category.
Mhm.
I think there's kind of a misconception that if you're reaching out for help, that things are disastrous or you've hit rock bottom or your life looks like a mess. And that truly wasn't the case. You know, my just like kind of daily glass of wine after work or with dinner had kind of become more of a habit than I wanted it to. And that one glass of wine was sometimes becoming three glasses of wine. And it was a very gradual increase, but my concern was what would that look like in 15 or 20 years from now if I didn't do something about it now?
Yeah.
Um, and as I'm getting older, I did turn 40 this year. So the alcohol is just affecting me a little bit differently than it did maybe 10, 15 years ago when my body could process it differently.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I really resonated so much with your program because I feel like everyone is in a very similar situation. Everyone is typically has some kind of career or taking care of their family, doing lots of things, have very full lives. And I think that's kind of how your program, why it resonated with me so well.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think sometimes that can be a hard place to be because a lot of you all have your shit together, right? And so we tell ourselves, well, I still go to work and I still am able to accomplish my goals. And, like we kind of like let it go on for a while. And that's how it was for me. I would tell myself, I would try to cut back and I'd tell myself, well, I'm a grown-ass woman. I've got 3 kids. I work full time. I take care of everything. I can surely have a couple glasses of wine when I want to justify that it really wasn't a problem, right? And
Yes.
it really wasn't a problem on the outside, but it was a problem for me internally because I was so frustrated with not being able to feel like I had control over it. I was so controlling in so many other areas of my life, right? Right? Trying to control all the things. And this was one thing that I just felt so frustrated about that I couldn't say, okay, I'm just not going to drink during the week. Like that was just not easy, right?
Right. And I felt that way too, because typically when I put my mind to something, I figure out how to get it done. Maybe not the first attempt, but eventually. And with the over drinking aspect, I felt like that was something that I really struggled to get a hold of it on my own, where majority of other goals in my life, I could figure it out. But this one, getting the extra support seemed really beneficial as well as kind of like I just mentioned, just seeing that there's other women in a very similar category as you that makes you feel just a little bit like you're not alone and there isn't anything wrong with you. And this is kind of a safe space to be able to work on these things.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Just like we have to hire financial support people or financial specialists or planners to help us make the most sense with our money and like help us make good decisions and maybe not emotional decisions. Sometimes it's important to hire somebody like me to help you figure out what is the best thing for me with alcohol. And I think, just reflecting back on my own emotions around money and alcohol. I think this is something that people can easily understand if you've made financial decisions. Like everything's emotional. All decisions really are emotional. It's just when should you make decisions based on how you feel and when you shouldn't, right? And so
Right.
everything that I teach about alcohol is like you really shouldn't be deciding to drink when you're feeling anxious. You really shouldn't be deciding to drink when you feel bored or scared or going through grief, right? And understanding when to make decisions based on your feelings and when not to, right? So, and I think you as
Hmm.
a financial planner help your clients do exactly the same thing, right?
Yes, exactly. So a lot of times when the market is being volatile or maybe going through kind of a correction like it is right now, a lot of fear and anxiety comes up for clients. They want that pain to stop immediately and they want out of the market. And that's a very, very emotional decision that they're wanting to make, which is where I kind of come in and help them kind of reevaluate that decision, pause, and decide from there if it's really what they want to move forward with.
Yeah, and I think it's like looking at you have a relationship with them, obviously, right? Or maybe you're just getting
Right,
to know them a little bit, but you understand their priorities and there's like you have developed a strategy with them, right? So
right.
like that's a financial plan, right? For them. And
Exactly.
it's important to remember that with them when they're going through these heightened uncertain feelings, right? Or fear about what's going to happen, to be like, this is your strategy. Remember, this is what your goals were, and help guide them through that while they're feeling uncomfortable. And I feel like that's exactly what I help you guys do is you have a strategy, you have your plan, you have your goals, and that when you're feeling emotional or your brain is telling you something based on circumstances that you might be in, say that there's a family situation going on or somebody gets sick or the world feels uncertain at certain times and you're feeling emotional and you want to change the plan. It's important to have
Yeah.
remind them of this is your strategy, this is your goals. Right now, your brain is just telling you this because of some volatility going on, whatever that looks like, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, even last week I spoke with a few clients that are a couple, and we were discussing the reason we kind of formulated their plan. It had the most likelihood of reaching their financial goals with the least amount of risk. And we had designed their portfolio, we design all portfolios really that way to get to the goals with the least amount of risk.
Mhm.
And we kind of came back to that discussion that we had put this plan together about 5 years ago. The plan was working. Yes, we're experiencing some volatility right now, but that's no reason to deviate from the plan. It's still the most likely plan to get us to our goals that we're trying to achieve. And once we kind of had that discussion, they paused and then we decided to give it 24 hours. We had a phone call the following day and they were able to kind of calm themselves down, relax somewhat, and understand that this is just temporary pain right now. There's no reason to do anything. And it actually worked out really well. They felt very comfortable and they just kind of reminded them of why we're doing what we're doing.
I love it. I think that pause is so important. We talk about that all the time on this podcast, right? Just stop. Don't
Hmm.
make reactive decisions because they usually don't have your best interest in mind. And the same thing for your clients and for mine. When people make decisions around their emotions, it's usually because they're scared. Usually that's the
Right.
underlying reason is because there's fear involved, right? Or a lack of wanting to be with their emotions. And I remember this very vividly for myself when I had my own conversation with my own financial planner. Was like I was scared, right? Like my brain was telling me the worst case scenarios is that all
Hmm.
of my hard these are what my thoughts were. All of my hardworking money just went away in last week. All of the money that I contributed last year is now gone. This is what I was
Right.
thinking. And I'm like, I worked too hard for this to just with, a day in the market to be gone like that. And that's not really what was happening, but that's how my brain was making sense of it looking at the numbers, right?
Right. Hmm.
It's not really for me, it's like, and I'm guessing for a lot of people, and I'm no financial expert, but it's not really real. It's almost like you got to look at it like units versus dollar amounts, and it's not, you weren't able to access it now anyway without taking huge tax liabilities and penalties, right?
Right.
And so you have to
Exactly.
look at it like longer term to like,
Hmm.
what is this value going to be in 5 years from now, in 10 years from now, in 20 years from now? And that's really hard to do when your brain is in that fear response,
Yes.
right?
It's just spitting out. And really, I think what it's looking for is just something it can control.
Yeah,
It's scared.
yeah, yeah. So I think it's just when we were making that connection during our call last week, it really clicked for you about the drinking stuff. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it really did because I do have these conversations with my clients. It seems like whenever there is some kind of market volatility or correction, you know, we have, I'll have this conversation with at least one client of let's just wait, talking about our plan, our long-term goals, why we're following the plan. But when we had our call, it really made me realize that I'm asking them to sit with their discomfort and trust me and realize that that plan's going to work. And I realized that sometimes when it comes to the alcohol, I'm too quick to not want to sit with that discomfort personally. So it reminded me that you have to be willing to sit with those feelings of uncomfort, whether it's to try and follow your financial plan, your alcohol plan, really achieve any goals. But it reminded me that I'm capable, I think, of following my plan more than maybe I sometimes think I am. And
Mhm.
if I'm asking this of my clients, I'm going to ask this of myself when it comes to my drinking plan.
Yeah, it's such a good reminder, right? Like it helps us kind of think about the discomfort in a different way, right?
It totally does, because maybe because I've been a financial advisor for so many years that market volatility really doesn't make me too anxious or concerned anymore. So I don't get those heightened emotions. But when it comes to maybe a drinking plan, going to a party on a Saturday night and I have no drinks on my plan, that might get my emotions fired up and a little bit nervous. So it was just interesting to see that different circumstances can make you feel different ways. But I think our response to pause is probably works in all of these situations.
Yeah, it really does. And having somebody, a guide, a coach, a consultant that you can talk about these things with, like a professional is so, so helpful, right? Just for somebody to
Yes,
hear you, validate your feelings and concerns, kind of calm your brain a little bit. My financial planner spent over an hour with me, taking me through the history of the markets for the past 30 years and all the ups and downs, and reminding me that I didn't call him in 2022 when things were dipping. And, like it really did help, even though I still felt the feelings. The feelings
mm,
were still there, and it was really hard for me to pause. Like I wanted to just protect everything so that I could get out of that discomfort. Like I saw that happening
mhm,
in real time, even though I chose not to. I didn't do anything, but I saw that happening in real time, and I think it helped me recognize too, because I'm so far away from the drinking. Like you're so far away from being emotionally reactive to the market because you've been doing this for so long. Like me, I'm so far away now, almost 7 years from feeling the urges to drink. It's hard for me to resonate with sometimes, right? What that feels like. But this I could,
right.
I'm like, this is such a good reminder of like our feelings also are temporary. I was
Yes.
feeling better the next day and like even better the next day after that, right? So it took a couple days for me to be with that and to really understand and step away for those to pass and to remember I'm so glad I didn't make an emotional decision. 'Cause
Yes.
the market kind
Hmm.
of went back up like a few days after.
Yeah. And that would be even more of a painful emotional decision,
Right?
you know?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
And just knowing the urges pass, right? This discomfort is not what you're going to experience forever.
right.
You're
And
not going to be comfortable with those urges or the anxiousness or the doubt or feeling like you're missing out. Like that is not something that you have to live with day in and day out when you're going through these things.
right. I've found that it's very temporary and it typically goes away a lot faster than you think it's going to. And the more times you experience kind of that discomfort or urge, the more you kind of build up a stamina or a willpower. I don't know if willpower is the right word, but kind of a stamina that like, oh, I can handle this. I've felt this before. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Which is kind of an empowering feeling.
Yeah. It's kind of like risk tolerance, right?
Yes, it really is.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So, how would you describe risk tolerance in the financial world?
So risk tolerance would be kind of the amount of risk you're willing to have your portfolio be exposed to in order to reach certain goals.
Mm-hmm.
So how risky you want to structure your portfolio in order to reach certain goals.
Mm-hmm.
Typically, the riskier it is, the more volatility you'll experience.
Mm-hmm.
Also, possibly the more likelihood of really exceeding your goals with some things that are extremely risky. And
Mm-hmm.
then there's the other side of it where you can keep things extremely safe, extremely conservative, but then it's very hard to reach large goals because those funds aren't really working for you over the years. They're extremely safe and really not doing a whole lot.
Yeah. So would you say that risk tolerance is somewhat compared to like your emotional tolerance of those ups and downs and the discomfort of that?
Yes, for sure. And this is interesting because when I'm meeting with clients in the very beginning and we're discussing risk, they're comfortable with taking the amount of risk necessary typically to meet their goals, which means having some money invested within the stock market. They understand that. They're comfortable with knowing that those funds can go up and down. It seems to be once it actually starts happening and the emotions come into play, that the clients get really nervous. So I try to do a ton of education up front with clients, letting them know these things are going to happen. It's not if the market corrects or if there's volatility, it's more of a when
Mhm,
conversation that we try to have so they
mhm,
can know that that fear might be coming in the future and we can kind of practice how they'll react to it.
mhm.
Um, Sometimes that can be helpful. Sometimes it can help take the edge off a little bit for clients and just get them aware of what could be coming in the future.
Yeah, and it's really hard to say what that it's hard to and I find this with my own clients too, like you like when I talk about having urges, right? You will experience discomfort when you do these things. Like this will happen at some point, right? But until the client or my client actually gets in that situation of those feelings, it's really hard to know what you're going to do, right? Or how you're going to feel or what thoughts are going to be coming in your mind about it. So it's like, okay, remember your strategy. This is the risk tolerance that we talked about. You're in that now, right? Like you're experiencing that now. So this is looking at, is it too much? Like, is it emotionally too much for you to handle and it's too distracting and it's really going to bother you? And it's like, you can make adjustments. Let's wait, obviously, and then let's
Hmm.
redo your strategy then when you're not in this emotional place. But like it's good for them to feel that and understand that.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And it's the same sort of like risk tolerance with my clients, right? So like when I first changed my relationship with alcohol, I would say I'm high risk tolerant. I intentionally put myself in party situations and vacations and weekend things without drinking so I could get all of that discomfort out of the way. And then I got to my goals pretty fast, right? And then some
Right.
people that work with me want to like slow drip and have a very low risk tolerance.
Are you talking about me?
I am not. I am not
Hermit life.
at all. You just did dry January, like you're good. Like that's a big risk, right? But I'm talking about people that like want to plan drinks every day, right? Because they don't want to experience discomfort, right? Their risk
Right.
tolerance is lower, and so they're going to get to their goals slower, right? Which is
Hmm.
fine. Like there's really no right or wrong way. If you want to get big goals, whether you're investing in the market or not, or you're trying to change your relationship with alcohol, the more you try to expand that tolerance, right? The faster you're going to get there, I think.
It does make a lot of sense because you're just giving yourself more opportunities to feel that discomfort and to be okay with it. So the more times you give yourself that opportunity, I think the stronger you become and the faster you will achieve those goals.
Yeah. And it does like with the looking at the alcohol, say you're not going to drink for 7 days in a row. Say that's your plan, right? And if you're brand new at starting this, that might feel a little risky. Like there might be like thoughts of, oh, I could fail at that, right? This could
Mm-hmm.
be a total shit show as I go out and do this. And that might be true because your tolerance, your risk is a little bit higher for failure because you're not
Right.
allowing anything on the table there in that moment. So you might go out and have a big overdrink. You might have to endure that risk of those feelings of not meeting your goal, right? And feeling disappointed in yourself. But you're going to
Mm-hmm.
learn so much in that process, right? And
Right.
catapult you to your end goal a lot faster than if you're kind of slow dripping it, right? Because you don't have a big opportunity, a big learning opportunity there to know yourself as much as if you just like totally took it off the table. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah, no, that does. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that, yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So it's just interesting to look at like they're very similar. And I think too, like you said, like any big goal or big change that you want to have, whether it's money, maybe it's working out, maybe it's buying a home, maybe it's cutting back on drinking. Like there's risks involved with all of that, right? And it's really
Hmm.
about how can we expand your emotional tolerance to get you the better gains.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
Hmm.
And I think those emotional tolerance skills can apply to any area of life, whether
Yeah,
it's finances or alcohol or weight loss or whatever it is you're working toward. But those skills are invaluable.
yeah. What have you learned about expanding your emotional tolerance around this kind of personal thing?
Um, well, what I have learned is that kind of like what you're alluding to is you have to put yourself out there and experience these things and feel them. Um, in the beginning, I kind of wanted to be a hermit and just not put myself out there and experience certain things where I would maybe feel discomfort, maybe where I had no drinks on my plan for that day and went to a social event and had to sit with those uncomfortable feelings. That was taught me a lot that those feelings pass. I can sit with them. It will be okay. Um, yeah, I think it just really lets you know that it's okay. Like those feelings are just temporary and they're not going to last forever. And typically, it's usually that first 20 minutes of discomfort that is the worst. And then usually it kind of dissipates. So I would say over the last year, my emotional tolerance has really grown. I'm able to be uncomfortable and not try to get of it immediately. I can sit with my anxiety and realize that it's just kind of there. It's been there forever and it's really not hurting me unless I let it consume me.
Mm, I love that. Yeah,
So, yeah.
that's amazing. What else do
Yeah.
people need to like? What do you feel like are some good connections people can make between the money and if they're working on their relationship with alcohol? Like, in the last week, what has kind of like opened up your head a little bit?
Yeah, when you and I spoke last week, we had kind of talked about like the compounding effects of both.
Mm,
So obviously we know the more time money has to compound, typically the more it can grow and just keep working for you. I think that's kind of true also with following an alcohol plan or maybe being completely alcohol free if that's your desire, or just following your plan, either one. But I think the more you do that, it kind of keeps building on itself and you just feel better and better. I think you said you're almost at 7 years and your mental clarity, you said, is like the best it's ever been, where someone who's still drinking, daily might not have that, but that's one of those kind of compounding effects that would be amazing.
I love that compounding effect. Yeah. For me too, it's like the mental clarity, but it's also like the compounding effect of me knowing myself.
Right.
Like I'm still like, oh, there's that thing. Like this, my emotional response to the market, right? Like that was interesting for me to observe and
Hmm.
got to see a different avenue of where my emotions want to drive my behavior, right? So that was really interesting for me to witness, like the compounding effect of me getting to know myself in different ways, in different buckets of my life, right? Like, and that wouldn't have been there without all of the other work, the deeper work that we do was on board. Like, I probably couldn't witness that as well if
Mm,
I hadn't had these 7 years compounding, right?
right.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. Neat.
So the point here is like even if it feels volatile, even if your relationship with alcohol is like a lot, like if you look at the stock market up and down and up and down. We talked a little bit about this last week, right?
Hmm.
Nothing is supposed to be so linear. It's not
Right.
supposed to be a straight, I'm no, you guys can't see me, but I'm making a horizontal graph with my hand. It's not supposed to look like that, just like the stock market's not supposed to look like that, right? It doesn't. It looks
Right.
volatile. If you look at all the data points in the stock market, it's up and down and up and up and up and up and then down and up. It's the same thing with changing your relationship with alcohol or any behavior that you want to change because humans aren't linear, right? Our,
Right.
our emotions aren't linear and
Hmm.
we're not perfect and neither is the stock market. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I think there are just kind of well, kind of relating it to a drinking plan, also kind of like there might be a lot of starts and stops along your path because sometimes you might have a drink plan, you feel all super motivated, excited about it, and day three comes and maybe you don't follow it exactly perfectly. And I know in the beginning, I just wanted to scrap the entire week then and like start over again on Monday because I felt like I had already failed. Let's just quit. So in the beginning, I lost a lot of time with just starting and stopping instead of just keep going. Even if I did have an overdrink on day 3, okay, let's get back to day 4 and keep going. So I
Mhm.
think that is kind of, you can relate that to the stock market also, where you're like, oh, my contribution last month, the market keeps going down. I'm not going to contribute anymore, or something along those lines, where you're starting and stopping instead of just following that plan and continuing along, even if you're not thrilled with the result you're possibly currently getting, just keep going with it. If you start and stop, you're just going to make it a lot harder and you're going to put the goal or the end line a lot further away.
I love that. Yes. And it's also normal humanness to want to do that, right?
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, took me months to realize that just because you have one overdrink or you don't follow something perfectly one day doesn't mean to throw in the towel for the next 4 days. Which obvious to me, saying that out loud now makes so much sense, but it really took me a long time to learn that.
Yeah, sometimes it has to be a little bit uncomfortable, right? Like we have to like really see it before it clicks. And I think what you said
Yes.
about the compounding thing is really important. Like even though you did that, you still were doing your evaluations. You were still showing up and getting coaching. You were still learning. And so
Hmm.
that had a compounding effect for you to finally, a few months in be like, you know what, how about I just pick it up instead of washing away the last 3 days of the week, right?
Yeah,
That
exactly.
mattered that you didn't quit, even though you may have said fuck it a few times. You didn't quit. And
Right.
so sometimes it feels like it's such a slog, like to keep going, even when you're failing. But you put in that time and that effort and that energy, and then finally it came together for you.
Yes, it did. And then when you can look back and see where you are today versus a year ago, that feeling is just so great. It's so like, ah, I'm so glad I didn't quit. I'm so glad I stuck with it. And I think you can also relate that right back to money. You could quit saving for retirement, you could quit following your budget, but you're probably not going to be really happy with where you are in a year from now. So if you just kind of keep going, it's just a much better option.
Yeah, I think if you look at what your long-term goals are, right?
Right.
You look at it when you need to look at it when like whatever your financial goals are. And Jamie and I are both young and we still have a lot of working years left. So we have a little bit more privilege for having time on our side, right? So we
For
can
sure.
play with that a little bit more. Maybe some older people don't have, right? So there's a different strategy for that, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So same thing with the alcohol stuff. If you look at your overall strategy, keep investing into your long-term goal, right? Instead of, well, it feels volatile now, so I'm not going to do it, right? So like, a lot of people come in like they have a lot of shit going on in their lives. There could be a death in the family or a medical diagnosis or something happening with their kids or their parents, right? And so they say, I don't have time for this right now, right?
Hmm.
But if they just
Yeah.
kept going through that discomfort, whatever was happening, they would get to their long-term goal instead of pausing that growth. And then they have to like come in and pick out when they could have had all that compounding time on their side, right?
Right. And to get that momentum going again is always a struggle too. That's hard. So if you can keep it, especially if your life is challenging and you do have a lot going on, I think that's the time when you really need to be following through because that's probably when you need the support the most.
Yeah. And what would you say the similar in money?
Um, So, and will you go back to the example again real quickly? I'm sorry. We were just talking about
Like when I was saying like if there's volatility in your personal life, right?
right.
A lot of people want to say, you know what, I don't have time for this. And so they
Yes.
stop investing into their personal growth, right? They stop doing
Right.
work. So the
Yes.
volatility that some people might experience in their portfolios, they want to
Right.
pull back and stop investing. You talk about that side.
Yes. So I have a lot of clients who are similar to our ages where they still have several working years ahead of them and they have kind of monthly contributions that are typically automatic. And when the market is experiencing volatility, sometimes people want to pause those contributions until things are more stable. And I'm using air quotes because
Yeah.
that's kind of a hard thing to ever know, really, in the stock market.
Mhm.
But we have this kind of discussion where we're saying, hey, the market's down 5 or 10% right now. Now is definitely the time you want to be contributing because remember, our long-term goal is always to buy low, sell high. So if
Hmm.
you always want to wait until things are stable and at the top, that's not the best time to always be investing. So we want to take advantage of these downturns and these volatile times and really continue with our contributions at that time.
Hmm.
Um, I also think it's interesting that I feel like investments are the only thing that when they're on sale, people are scared of them and run.
Oh
You
my
know,
God.
most
Exactly what my financial advisor told me. He's like, you're telling me you don't want to buy this high value thing at 50% off. I'm like, right, I am telling you that. Yep.
exactly. Yes. So I have a very similar conversation with my clients. I say, hey, if you walk into the grocery store and you see, your favorite things are BOGO, you're probably stocking up. Buy one, get one. And
Yeah.
we kind of joke about the stock market when things are lower. It makes sense to keep going with your plan because your dollars are buying more investments during that time. So you want to keep it going.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
That's
So
yeah, that's good. I know. I don't remember exactly what I said. I was like, well, it just really depends on what you value. And if I don't value the sale, then I'm not going to invest in it. I was like so snarky. He definitely was earning his money in that conversation. But I think that's a really good,
yeah.
and just to turn it back to the drinking. I just love the parallels here with all of this, right? So when your life is feeling volatile and you are feeling extra emotional and you feel like you're at your max capacity for taking on other things, that is actually the juiciest time and the most valuable
Mhm.
time to make changes because you have real time opportunities to start to learn how to be with those feelings and real data about how you respond to difficult situations from your humanness to look at and learn from and start to interrupt. When things are easy, it's easy to not overdrink, right? Just like
Exactly.
your
Yes.
clients are like, it's real easy to invest when the stock market is booming. Yeah, let's keep going, right? That's easy. But the
Right.
real growth happens when things are hard, and you can learn about yourself and your own emotions that are driving these behaviors. And if you can interrupt that, that is like gold, right? It
Yes.
can carry
Mhm.
you through into the future in so many different things.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Any other comparisons that have come up that you feel like we should talk about?
Um, no, I think we hit them all with the compounding and kind of just following through when either life gets hard or the market gets hard.
Yeah. And expanding our
Uh,
risk tolerance.
yes, but I
Yeah.
think the just kind of the similarities between the two are interesting.
Yeah.
Since you brought it up last week or it came up on our call, I've just been thinking about it throughout the last week, and it's just been interesting.
Yeah. It is so interesting. Human behavior, and what we want to do when we feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
And really, it all comes back to like, we just want to protect ourselves and be safe and hide. We want to hoard our money. We want to protect our emotions, right? Like we don't want to feel that discomfort. So like we always are trying to figure out a way to make ourselves feel better. And I
Hmm.
think that if everybody can understand that and see how they are doing that in any bucket of their life, they can become more empowered and they can just say, okay, I can see this happening. I can see that I'm trying to escape this difficult feeling. So with the stock market or your finance and your financial investments, I'm seeing that my action of wanting to take everything out is going to make me feel more secure. That's what I'm after. So I want to feel more secure, right?
Right.
And the same thing with the drinking. I just want to not feel my anxiety. I just want to not feel uncertainty. So I'm going to drink to not feel those things. That's the decision, right?
Right.
You can recognize that happening in real time and just decide to pause, be like, oh, I recognize I'm wanting to do this so I can feel something different. That's kind of the
Hmm.
motivator. And pause and recognize that that's happening and think about that'll help you think about your bigger goals at hand. Is this going to support my overall goals or is this not going to support my overall goals?
Right.
Usually, if you're making it wanting to make a decision based on your feelings and their discomfort, there's uncomfortable feelings going, it's probably not going to be in support of your long-term goals.
Right. Yeah. It's more of a I want this pain to go away
Yes.
immediately kind of decision.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jamie. I mean, I feel like we covered a lot. Any final comments, thoughts, suggestions to people? What, like we're enrolling for a Live AF right now, the online membership. What would you tell people that might be considering that or thinking about joining my 6-month program this summer?
If you're thinking about it, that means you probably should do it, would be my suggestion. I don't think you have anything to lose by re-examining your relationship with alcohol. You can decide that maybe it's fine just the way it is. Maybe you do want to cut back. So I think pursuing that and trying it is the best option.
Yeah, thank you. And just tell them
Sure.
a little bit about the results that you've gotten by doing this work so far.
Yeah. So it's like I said, it's been, I guess it'll be about a year in June since I signed up for your transformation program. At that time, I guess I would say I was probably drinking about 5 days a week, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just kind of wanted that to stop, kind of like that daily glass of wine after work or when cooking dinner. And I just, like I said, it was just becoming more habitual. So since then, I have cut back dramatically. I think I did try January this year. That was my first, I think, successful attempt at dry January in a very long time, if ever. So that felt amazing. And just cutting back on a regular basis has helped me honestly not be scared of my own emotions, which I know we've talked about emotions a lot today on this podcast, but that was something I think one of the main reasons I was sometimes over drinking is because those negative emotions, I didn't really know what to do with them.
Mhm.
And now I'm more comfortable just sitting with them. They typically pass. So learning that skill has been invaluable. Drinking less has me sleeping a lot better. And just honestly, my confidence has skyrocketed because this is something that was in the back of my mind that I knew I kind of maybe should be addressing or working on. And I kind of just brushed it off for a while. And now that I am addressing it and doing something, just that confidence and thoughts about myself have really improved.
I love that. That's the most important, right?
It really is because you're with yourself all the time. If you're just thinking nasty things about you always, like just makes for a really long day, like really long.
And then what do you want to do at the end of the day when you're
Yeah.
like if it's
That,
feeling so long and you're feeling shitty about yourself, like, if you're stuck in that cycle, that's when okay, who cares? It doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. And then we drink and then we start
right.
that cycle all over again. So I love that you shared that you feel better about yourself and your confidence and it's nice to know that you're doing something about it, right?
100% because yeah, when you feel like you should be and you're not, I think that's the worst feeling.
Yes, that guilt that kind of runs the show and the frustration around it and saying I'm gonna
Yeah,
try and then not really doing much about it. It kind of like chips away at your psyche, and
totally.
confidence and what you think your capabilities are. And that's just sad, because
Yeah,
all of us here on this podcast, listening, all the clients, potential people, maybe they'll never be clients, but like you deserve to feel good about yourself and you deserve to see what you're fully capable of. That's really what we want, right?
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Jamie. If people wanted to check out your firm, how could they do that?
Yeah, so you can find me. My website is burgerwealthmanagement.com. You can find me there. Yeah, and thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun.
That was so fun. Thank you again, Jamie.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, wasn't that such an amazing episode with Jamie? I'm so proud of all the work that she's done. And I just love this connection between money and changing your relationship with alcohol. So I hope that you had some parallels, even if you're not invested or you don't have your own personal finance person, that you can see the connection into the human behavior that's associated with making some of these emotional decisions, when to make them, how the importance of having a plan and having an advisor or a coach or an expert or a professional help you navigate this in real time when you're having some of these emotions come up, whether it's changing your relationship with alcohol or investing. I hope that you see the value in that. And thank you again so much, Jamie. And let's all give her a big shout out for her willingness to come on the podcast and share. And we will link up her website in the show notes for you as well. And consider joining Alive AF. Enrollment closes on March 30th. It's angelamascenik.com/AliveAF. And we will talk to you all next week. Bye. I want you to check out angelamascenik.com/AliveAF. You know what it's like to have a desire to cut back on your drinking, right? You start to read books, listen to podcasts, try things, but you might not be able to yet put all the pieces and suggestions together in a way that actually makes sense and works for you. You might struggle with beating yourself up after an overdrink. You might get frustrated with yourself when you take 2 steps forward and then another 2 steps back, and get overwhelmed with what's right and wrong about your relationship with alcohol. Your friends tell you that you should be able to have just 1 drink, and it isn't a big deal. You might be white-knuckling through urges and resisting instead of peacefully processing them. And you might struggle with your identity as someone who has enjoyed having a lot of wine or alcohol in your life. It's around you all of the time. It's what you do and who you are. Well, after 5 years of successfully coaching hundreds of women through these struggles, I have created the Alive AF membership, where women like you can learn the basics on what it takes to cut back and reach your goals with alcohol, whether it is to just drink less or totally quit. And when you join, you will get the exact framework I used to change my own relationship with alcohol and still use today, that has led me to be alcohol-free for over 5 years. You're going to get access to my resources, videos, and worksheets that have been proven to change and reduce how much you drink. Every day you can ask questions, share your obstacles, and get coaching and direct support on the challenges you will face with love and no judgment. Also, you will get immediate access to workshops like uncovering your alcohol identity and changing it, how to say no to things that don't support your new identity or life or goals, aka boundaries, a workshop called Creating Emotional Agency, and another one, How to Manage Your Mind to Succeed at Your Goals, and more. Every month we have a brand new workshop. These workshops are filled with step-by-step prompts and instruction to help you create the exact relationship with alcohol that is best for you. My mission and vision for Alive AF is to be a hub of support and resources for women to come and learn how to do what is best for them and becoming more alive in the process. When you join, you're going to learn how to take care of yourself better, how to feel good and become more alive and go after the life that you really want. I want this membership to be affordable and an easy solution where you can get all the help you need in one simple place whenever you need it. So, no need to go read another book, find a new podcast, attend a free webinar, or go down the path of piecemealing it all together. Join Alive AF and have it all there in one place for you anytime you need it. So, go to angelamascenik.com/AliveAF, and enrollment is open right now. See you inside.